I've lost my voice in screaming and lamentation this weekend, and I have lost my mind sometime earlier this year, so I have to read. I am the most overrated and most over-decorated, and currently I am the most over-berated actress.
For decades, Meryl Streep has been celebrated as the gold standard of acting. A woman so talented that Hollywood practically rewrote the dictionary under legend. She's the record holder with 21 Oscar nominations, 3 wins, and countless performances that left audiences in awe. Yet behind the polished grace and effortless transformations, there was something far heavier than awards resting on her shoulders. At 79, Streep finally revealed a secret that haunted her entire career. And it doesn't concern her fame, her fortune, or her unrivaled artistry. Instead, it's about the private burden she carried in silence. And the truth she carried for all these years is more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. It's a revelation that forces us to look at her dazzling success in a completely different light. One that mixes admiration with sorrow and even a touch of disbelief. But before we reach her shocking confession, we must go back to the very beginning of her career. What could possibly be so haunting? You are about to find out. The making of a legend.
Now tell me the truth, are you really a Beatles fan or are you here because it's the right thing to do?
I love the Beatles.
I bet there's a group you like better now.
No, I don't like any group better than the Beatles.
Honestly, aren't the Beatles on their way out?
I don't think so. I think they're still strong.
I'm leaving you.
Honey, please. I can't hear you. What? Okay, you too. Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow. Guys, eat.
Ted, I'm leaving you. Ted. Keys. Here are my keys. Here's my American Express card. Here's my Bloomingdale's credit card. Here's my checkbook. I've taken $2,000 out of our savings account because that's what I had in the bank when we first got married.
Meryl Streep was never meant to be ordinary. Born Mary Louise Streep in Summit, New Jersey in 1949, she was the type of child who could memorize entire songs after hearing them once, deliver them to her family like a Broadway star, and still manage to ace her homework. By the time she reached high school, she wasn't just the smart girl in class. She was the one who could step on stage, transform into someone entirely different, and convince you that she'd lived their life. Teachers knew they were watching a talent that couldn't be contained by the walls of a suburban classroom. But brilliance needs direction. And for Streep, that direction came in the form of the Yale School of Drama. Yale was no walk in the park. It was grueling, competitive, and filled with the kind of pressure that breaks most students before it makes them. Yet Meryl didn't just survive Yale, she conquered it. Her professors recall a young woman with an uncanny ability to slip into any character. Tragedy, comedy, drama, she didn't just play the role, she became it. Her classmates were in awe, sometimes even a little intimidated. One joked that working with her was like competing in a marathon with someone who was born running. By the mid-1970s, Meryl was already making waves on stage in New York, earning respect from critics who weren't exactly known for generosity. The theater world whispered her name with reverence. Hollywood, however, remained skeptical. After all, the film industry demanded a different type of star power, and no one knew if Streep's quiet genius would translate to the big screen.
The cleaning, here's the laundry ticket. You can pick them both up on Saturday. You have to
Joe,
pick them
you
up
want
on
to tell me
Saturday.
what's the matter?
I paid the rent, I paid
Joe.
the Con Ed bill, and I paid the phone bill, so...
Well, you really pick your times to...
Then came Kramer vs. Kramer in 1979. Cast alongside Dustin Hoffman in a story about divorce and custody battles, Meryl turned what could have been a supporting role into a career-defining moment. Her performance as Joanna Kramer, a mother torn between her child and her own sense of identity, was raw, vulnerable, and devastatingly real. Audiences wept, critics raved, and the Academy awarded her first Oscar. Practically overnight, Meryl Streep became a household name. From that moment, she was unstoppable. The 1980s and 1990s cemented her reputation as a chameleon, an actress who could vanish inside any character. British aristocrat? Done. Holocaust survivor? Done. A witch singing Sondheim? Done. And she made it look effortless. Directors lined up to work with her. Actors dreamed of sharing scenes with her. And award shows quickly learned to keep her seat warm because she was almost guaranteed to be in the running.
Oh my God. Oh, come on. Oh.
The statistics alone are staggering. 3 Academy Award wins, a record-breaking 21 nominations, over 30 Golden Globe nominations. Her mantelpiece must have groaned under the weight of so many trophies, and yet she carried her success with a kind of wry humor. "They always say it's an honor just to be nominated," she once quipped, "but after the 20th time, it does start to feel suspicious." Audiences adored her, not just for the characters she played, but for the woman behind them. She wasn't scandalous, she wasn't flashy, and she didn't need to reinvent herself every 5 minutes to stay relevant. She was simply Meryl Streep, the actress everyone trusted to elevate any story she touched. But while Hollywood marveled at her flawless performances, Meryl was fighting a private battle she rarely spoke about. It was a struggle that began long before the awards, long before Kramer versus Kramer, even long before Yale. Early struggles with insecurity.
Why did I become an actress? Probably because my friends told me that I did it very well in college. That's when I first was in a play.
For the world, Meryl Streep's rise looked effortless, a steady climb from Yale's drama stages to Oscar glory with Kramer versus Kramer. But as dazzling as it appeared on the outside, the inside told a very different story. Beneath the cool grace, beneath the seemingly unshakable talent, the award-winning screen star wrestled with something most fans would find almost unbelievable: crippling self-doubt. Yes, Meryl Streep, the actress often hailed as the greatest of her generation, privately worried she wasn't good enough. She admitted in later interviews that she lived in constant fear of failure. Whenever a new role came across her desk, her first thought wasn't, "What can I do with this?" but "What if I ruin it?" That fear wasn't just theoretical. It dictated her choices. She actually turned down roles, not because they weren't challenging enough, but because she felt she couldn't live up to them.
Directors and casting people see so little of what you have. They see so little of your potential. You have everybody in you.
One of the most striking examples came when she was offered parts in films that went on to become cultural touchstones. At times, she declined opportunities because the mere thought of disappointing an audience, or worse, herself, felt unbearable. "They'll find me out," she would whisper to close friends, convinced she was only one bad performance away from being exposed as a fraud. It's the classic imposter syndrome, but hearing it from a woman with more talent in her pinky finger than most actors dream of in a lifetime feels almost surreal. Her friends noticed it too. Many have described her as the most self-critical person in the room. In rehearsal spaces, when others patted themselves on the back for remembering lines, Meryl was obsessing over whether she had chosen the right inflection for a single word. She could spend hours agonizing over a pause, a glance, a gesture. To her, perfection was never good enough. There was always another layer, another truth to uncover. That intensity made her brilliant, yes, but it also made her her own harshest enemy.
And the Emmy goes to Meryl Streep, Angels in America.
This is the third Emmy nomination and second win for Meryl Streep. In Angels in America, Ms. Streep performed the roles of Hannah Pitt, Ethel Rosenberg.
It wasn't just work that triggered this gnawing insecurity. Meryl carried the weight of expectation everywhere. After Kramer versus Kramer, the label "The Best Actress Alive" followed her like a shadow. Most actors dream of such a title. For Meryl, it felt like a trap. How do you live up to being called the best, not once, not twice, but for decades? Every performance, no matter how extraordinary, brought with it the anxiety of, what if this is the one where I fail them? Even in moments of triumph, she undercut herself. When asked about her string of Oscar nominations, she often brushed it off with humor. "I've been nominated so many times," she laughed once, "that people probably think I have a cot reserved at the Dolby Theater." The room laughed with her, but what they didn't see was that the joke masked an all-too-real fear, that one day she'd be found unworthy of all the praise. This contradiction, a woman both idolized and insecure, both triumphant and terrified, is what makes her story so deeply human. It reminds us that even legends are not immune to the voices of doubt. In fact, sometimes the higher you climb, the louder those voices become. And as her fame grew, the pressure only made her secret more unbearable. Hollywood's dark side.
The predominance of the offerings from Hollywood have been usually, and around the world, have been stories driven by men. That's great. Many of the films have been fantastic, but yes, they should be made by women. Mostly they should be greenlit by women.
If self-doubt was one demon Meryl carried, Hollywood itself supplied plenty more. For all its glittering red carpets and golden statues, the industry wasn't exactly a welcoming place for ambitious young women in the 1970s. Sexism was baked into the system, and even someone as dazzlingly gifted as Meryl Streep wasn't immune to it. She has spoken candidly about being dismissed, patronized, and underestimated by powerful men who couldn't see past her blonde hair and delicate features. Casting directors would reduce her to the pretty girl. Producers would tell her she wasn't leading lady material, and directors sometimes spoke to her as if she were an accessory to the scene, rather than the heartbeat of it. It's hard to imagine now, the woman with more Oscar nominations than anyone in history being treated like background wallpaper, but that was the reality.
The word isn't disheartening, it's infuriating. Because people accept this as received wisdom. This is just the way it is. It isn't fair. So we need inclusion.
Even more troubling, Meryl admitted that she had faced harassment early in her career. She rarely named names, preferring instead to acknowledge the systemic culture that allowed such behavior to thrive. Still, the fact that one of the greatest actresses of her generation had to endure the same humiliations as countless other women speaks volumes about the darker underbelly of Hollywood. And yet, she endured it all with the resilience and quiet steel that would later define her roles. When directors talked down to her, she let her performances speak louder. When producers doubted her, she gave them a masterclass in what it meant to embody a character. And when the industry tried to box her in, she refused to stay put. It's no coincidence that so many of her most iconic roles feature women breaking free of expectations. Art often mirrored her reality. But here's the haunting question. Did these early battles plant the seed of the secret she would carry for decades? Was the weight of constant dismissal, harassment, and condescension part of the burden that shadowed her legendary career? Her public triumphs were undeniable. But in private, each victory was complicated by memories of what she had endured to get there. And one tragic incident in her personal life only deepened the weight she carried. The shadow of John Cazale.
And I actually am only a bit player. At the time, there was a tragedy happening in her life, and a loved one close to her was terminally ill. And sadly, right after the production of Holocaust, passed away. He was lucky enough to have as the last vision of his life, Meryl's lovely face.
Conversation was a cult film. People already had it on as their favorite film of all time, especially people who wanted to show that they were impervious to the mass taste. You know, like, it's not The Godfather that I love the most, it's...
They always say everyone deserves to be loved, or to love, and Meryl is no exception. Before the Oscars, before the headlines, before the world crowned her the greatest actress alive, Meryl Streep's world revolved around one man, John Cazale. To most, Cazale is remembered as the actor who played Fredo Corleone in The Godfather, vulnerable, tragic, unforgettable. But to Meryl, he was far more than a supporting role in cinema history. He was her great love.
He said there was something in it for me, on my own. I've always taken care of you, Meryl. Taking care of me? You're my kid brother, and you take care of me?
They met in the mid-1970s, when both worked in New York theater. Cazale, older and already established thanks to The Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon, was known in acting circles as an artist's artist, someone whose depth elevated every scene he touched. Meryl was the rising star, fresh from Yale, brimming with talent, but still carving her path. Together, they sparked instantly. Their friends said it wasn't just romance, it was collaboration, two souls who spoke the same creative language. Soon, they were inseparable. Cazale became not only Meryl's partner in life, but also her fiercest supporter. He championed her talent long before Hollywood took notice, reminding her that her fears of inadequacy were illusions. In return, Meryl adored his quiet genius. "All I wanted to do was be with him, to listen to him," she later recalled. They weren't the flashy couple of the tabloids, but artists building a private world of devotion and creativity. But that world shattered in 1977, when John was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. The news hit like a thunderclap. Meryl was only in her late 20s, standing at the edge of a promising career, and suddenly the man she loved most was slipping away. For some, the pressure might have been unbearable. For Meryl, there was no question. She put her rising fame on hold to stand by John's side. Friends described her devotion as unwavering. She moved into his hospital room, cared for him daily, and fought to keep his spirits alive even as his body weakened. At the same time, she was performing in The Deer Hunter, a grueling production in which Cazale himself was cast, thanks in part to Meryl's insistence that the studio keep him despite his illness. The insurance company wanted to fire him, fearing he might not survive the shoot. Meryl threatened to walk off the film if they did. The producers relented. John completed his final role, and Meryl made sure his artistry lived on. But no matter how much love or fight she gave, cancer was merciless. In March 1978, John Cazale passed away at only 42. Meryl was devastated. Just months later, she would win her first major recognition in Hollywood with Kramer vs. Kramer. To the world, it looked like the beginning of an unstoppable career. To Meryl, It felt like triumph had arrived in the shadow of unbearable loss. That juxtaposition became one of the defining paradoxes of her life. Her greatest professional breakthrough came hand in hand with her greatest personal heartbreak. Even decades later, she spoke of John with reverence, crediting him as one of the most profound influences on her craft and her spirit. Those who knew her then said she never really stopped carrying him. Their love story was short, but it burned with an intensity that shaped everything Meryl became. John taught her not just about acting, but about the courage to live truthfully, even when truth meant pain. And in the years that followed, Meryl admitted she carried a guilt that never left her. Guilt and the roles that defined her.
Have you ever dated a magician?
Let me think. I don't think so.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
When John Cazale died in March 1978, Meryl's world was shattered for sure. The man who had believed in her brilliance from the very beginning was gone, and she was left with a silence that no amount of applause could fill. For most people, grief means retreat, stepping away from work, from the public eye, from anything that demands too much energy. But for Meryl, grief became something else entirely. Fuel.
Can you tell the court why you are asking for custody?
Because he's my child. And because I love him.
Just months later, she was on set for Kramer vs. Kramer, filming gut-wrenching scenes of separation and heartbreak while still reeling from her own. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, portraying a mother walking away from her child, while in real life, she had just been forced to say goodbye to the love of her life. She later confessed that she often felt she was acting through grief rather than healing from it. The emotions audiences saw on screen weren't just brilliant craft. They were raw, personal, and painfully real. Critics hailed her performance as transcendent, the kind of acting that doesn't just tell a story, but rips it straight from the soul. And it was. Streep won her first Academy Award for the role, catapulting her into Hollywood royalty. But behind the gold statuette and glowing reviews was a gnawing ache. Her breakthrough had come hand in hand with her deepest loss. From there, her career soared. Roles in Sophie's Choice, Out of Africa, The Bridges of Madison County, and dozens more cemented her as a living legend. Time and again, she disappeared into characters so completely that audiences forgot Meryl existed at all. But privately, she admitted there was always a part of her that wondered if her extraordinary ability to inhabit sorrow came from that wound left by John. Was she drawing from a well of grief that had never been allowed to close? This is where speculation grows haunting. Did Meryl believe her success came at the cost of losing him? Would she have become the same towering figure of cinema had tragedy not carved its mark so deeply into her? Friends said she rarely spoke of it, but her silences spoke louder than words. And in interviews, when she did reflect, her comments carried the weight of someone who could never fully untangle triumph from tragedy. It's this contradiction that defines her legacy, a woman celebrated for her mastery of human emotion, even as she questioned whether that mastery came from a place of unresolved pain. And in interviews years later, the celebrated actress revealed that this guilt became a lifelong burden. Whispers of burnout and regret.
And the BAFTA goes to Meryl Streep.
By the 1980s, Streep was no longer a rising star. She was the star. Every awards season, her name was practically engraved on the shortlists before nominations were even announced. Directors clamored for her, Studios marketed entire projects around her, and audiences trusted that if her name was on the poster, the film was worth watching. But behind the glittering reputation, there was an unease she couldn't shake. Friends whispered that she often worried her career was built on tragedy. The loss of John Cazale haunted her, and though the world saw her as a fearless icon, Meryl confided to those closest to her that she sometimes felt her success had come at a cost too heavy to bear. She began to wonder, was she truly acting, or just bleeding grief onto every role? That doubt fed something darker: burnout. Throughout the late 1980s and into the 90s, there were moments when Streep seriously considered leaving Hollywood altogether. Fame, as dazzling as it appeared from the outside, felt suffocating on the inside. The pressure to live up to her reputation, to consistently deliver perfection, weighed like an anchor. She spoke of the constant anxiety that someone would finally say, "She's lost it. She's not the Meryl we thought she was." Her choices reflected that inner tug-of-war. While other stars were chasing massive blockbusters, Meryl turned down roles that might have made her even more bankable. She avoided certain projects, not because they weren't appealing, but because she feared the spotlight they carried. Instead, she leaned into smaller, more intimate films, projects that gave her space to breathe and explore, but didn't demand the kind of global scrutiny that Hollywood juggernauts would bring.
That was Dino De Laurentiis Sr. And his son had seen me in a play. And I walked in and his son was sitting there, very excited that he brought in this new actress. And the father said to his son, in Italian, because I understand Italian, he said, "Che brutta." You know, why do you bring me this ugly thing?
This wasn't laziness, it was self-preservation. To the outside world, it looked like artistic integrity. To Meryl, it was survival. And perhaps a way to silence the nagging fear that her career rested not just on talent, but on the scar of her greatest heartbreak. Even in her lighter roles, comedies, musicals, or character-driven dramas, friends noticed a shadow that never quite left her. Meryl could make the world laugh. She could belt a song. She could transform into anyone. But beneath it all, she was still the woman who had lost John too soon. That wound never fully healed, no matter how many scripts she accepted or how many trophies she collected. Hollywood worshipped her. But privately, she was battling regret, exhaustion, and a question that never left her. Was the legend of Meryl Streep born from love or from loss? But the true depth of her secret wouldn't come out until decades later. What she finally revealed to friends and family.
Boy, I didn't think we'd get past security out there.
Yeah, I know. Now we just have to get past all our insecurities up here.
Okay.
For years, Meryl's public image was the picture of grace, poised on every red carpet, eloquent in every interview, unstoppable on screen. But those closest to her knew there was another layer to the story, one that didn't glitter with the same golden glow. In private, she admitted her biggest fear, that she had betrayed her own happiness by never truly moving on from her grief. John Cazale had been gone since 1978, yet in her heart, he never left. Friends recalled that even as she built a family, even as she achieved what no actor before or since has achieved, she sometimes spoke as if her life had been divided into two halves, the years with John and everything that came after. Every award speech she gave, every role that earned her thunderous applause, carried a shadow only she could feel. Behind the radiant smiles and carefully chosen words, there was always the whisper, "This should have been different. He should have been here."
Hi, I'm Meryl Streep, and this is Mamie and Gracie Gummer, and we're from Salisbury, Connecticut. We'd like to say good morning, America.
Oh, God.
Good morning, America.
Her children and closest confidants described her as profoundly loving, yet quietly burdened. She confessed that no matter how high her career soared, she could not escape the thought that her professional triumphs had been born out of personal devastation. It was as though part of her feared she had been acting through loss for an entire lifetime. Still, she managed to turn her private sorrow into public brilliance, making audiences believe in characters who felt real because she poured her own truth into them. It was her gift and her curse. And as the years passed, the weight of carrying that duality grew heavier. To friends and family, she eventually voiced what she had never told the world, that the legend of Meryl Streep was inseparable from the grief of losing John Cazale, and that she sometimes wondered whether she had ever allowed herself to truly be happy again. And at 79, Meryl finally shared publicly the haunting truth that defined her life. The secret that haunted Meryl Streep.
Growing up with the kids young, off on different movie sets, did you draw from that experience to help kind of inform your character?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't think my experience in my life, I've never been thwarted. Nobody ever tried to stop me.
Streep finally peeled back the curtain on the truth she had carried for most of her life. For decades, the world had wondered, how could one woman embody so much heartbreak, resilience, and raw humanity in her roles? Her answer was as simple as it was devastating. She confessed that she had never stopped carrying John Cazale with her. From the moment he died in 1978, every performance, every accolade, every triumph was shadowed by his absence. To the outside world, she was the picture of achievement. The three-time Academy Award winner, the record holder with 21 nominations, the woman whose name became shorthand for greatness. But inside, she admitted, her career often felt like both a tribute and a prison. Every role that drew from her well of sorrow reminded her of the man she had loved and lost. Every award she accepted felt like a silent acknowledgement of the cost at which it had come. Meryl revealed that she sometimes felt like an imposter of joy. Outwardly, she laughed on red carpets, dazzled at premieres, and raised her family with warmth and dedication. But inwardly, she mourned. It was as though her life had been split in two. The public Meryl, adored and acclaimed, and the private Meryl, who could never quite set down the grief she carried. In interviews, she spoke with characteristic candor and even a touch of humor, admitting that she often wondered if critics were praising her acting when, in truth, she was just bleeding her real emotions onto the screen. Maybe I wasn't creating characters, she mused once. Maybe I was just finding new costumes for my grief. It was a half joke, but one that struck uncomfortably close to the bone. And yet, this secret didn't diminish her legacy. If anything, it deepened it. Knowing the cost of her brilliance, audiences could see her roles with new eyes. The aching vulnerability in Sophie's Choice, the quiet resilience in Out of Africa, the bittersweet tenderness in The Bridges of Madison County. These weren't just performances, they were echoes of a love story that had ended too soon. In the end, Meryl's confession wasn't about scandal, nor about failure. It wasn't the kind of revelation that toppled reputations or shocked tabloids. It was far more human, far more universal. This secret wasn't about scandal, but about grief. A love and loss that haunted even her greatest triumphs.
I hereby proclaim this Meryl Streep Day in Hollywood.
I'm flabbergasted. I thought there would be like 12 people, maybe. I'm really touched and I'm very, very grateful. So I hope you all enjoy Meryl Streep Day today.
Meryl Streep's name is etched into cinematic history as the standard of excellence. With 3 Oscars, a record-breaking 21 nominations, and roles that span every imaginable genre, she has become the actress against whom all others are measured. Yet, her late-life confession forces us to look at her not just as a legend, but as a woman who bore the weight of grief in silence. Her story reminds us that greatness often comes at a cost. Streep's unmatched ability to inhabit characters may have sprung, in part, from the well of sorrow she never fully drained. It's why her performances felt less like acting and more like a lived experience. We weren't simply watching fiction, we were witnessing fragments of a heart that had been broken and never truly healed. Her confession strips away the myth of perfection and replaces it with something more powerful: humanity. For all her awards and accolades, Meryl's greatest role may have been her ability to turn private pain into public art. Behind every award and every role was a woman still mourning the greatest loss of her life. And so, we're left with a haunting question. Do you think Meryl's secret made her performances more powerful? Or was it a burden she should have shared sooner? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. And that's it from us today. Until next time, thank you for watching.